Nighthawks, Battle for the Future of Humanity. Prologue. In the beginning it came as a serpent. In the Garden of Eden, the enemy's promise was simple. Ye shall be as gods. A lie wrapped in the illusion of enlightenment, of transcendence beyond human limitations. Now, millennia later, the same deception wore new clothes. Instead of a serpent in a garden, it arrived as a green light in the night sky. Instead of fruit from a forbidden tree, it offered enhanced consciousness through alien technology. But the promise remained the same: transcendence, power, godhood. In a small mountain town in North Carolina, where ancient ley lines crossed beneath modern radio towers, the enemy prepared to launch its greatest deception yet. But God had already chosen his warriors, ordinary people who would soon face the battle of their lives, armed with nothing but faith against forces beyond human comprehension. This is their story. Chapter 1. The Night at the Tower. Malcolm Davis's eyes burned as he steered his pickup down the winding mountain road. Another late-night repair at the radio tower, another drive home well after midnight. The beacon was out again, the transmitter on the fritz, and the Wi-Fi repeater needed recalibration. Just another day's work at the communications shack outside Asheville. 15 years at the station, and what did he have to show for it? A company truck that belonged in a junkyard, tools that should have been replaced during the Clinton administration, and a salary that barely kept pace with inflation. Malcolm had watched younger techs come and go, moving on to better positions in bigger cities, while he stayed behind, keeping the ancient equipment running through sheer stubbornness and duct tape. Some nights, like tonight, he'd catch himself staring at the tower's blinking lights, wondering if this was all there was, if there'd ever be something more to his life than emergency repairs and midnight drives through the mountains. The pay wasn't worth it, but then again, nothing about this job was. He needed a purpose, something to make sense of the countless hours he'd spent keeping these signals flowing through the Carolina hills. The job wasn't the only thing wearing him down. His empty house waited at the end of each shift, a reminder of everything he'd lost. Mary had left 3 years ago, running off with Todd, his best friend since high school, leaving nothing but divorce papers and hollow apologies. His doctor's warnings about smoking echoed in his head with every cigarette, along with the reminder that he couldn't have kids anymore even if he wanted to. His grown children rarely called, busy with their own lives in distant cities. Some nights, the loneliness felt like a physical weight on his chest, heavier than any tool in his belt. Life had become a series of motions: wake up, work, sleep, repeat, with nothing to look forward to, nothing to break the monotony. Even the mountains that had once filled him with awe now felt like prison walls, keeping him trapped in a life that had lost its meaning. The old Ford groaned through the cold North Carolina night, taking 3 tries before the engine finally turned over. 20 miles of sharp curves and steep grades lay between him and home. As Malcolm approached the tunnel, something seemed off. The usual fluorescent lights were dark, creating a void in the mountainside. That's when it happened. Something flashed overhead as he entered the tunnel. In an instant, his truck died. Engine, lights, everything. Even his phone went dead. Through the dirty windshield, he caught a glimpse of something impossible. A bright light at the tunnel's end, then absolute darkness. And in that darkness, something green. Malcolm squinted through the grime-covered glass, but the dead wipers left him nearly blind. Cursing under his breath, he strained to see through the streaked windshield. The air inside the cab grew heavy, thick with the metallic tang of ozone. A low hum vibrated through the truck's frame, rattling the dashboard and blurring his vision. He gripped the steering wheel with knuckles white as the green light intensified, casting an eerie glow on the cracked vinyl seats. The temperature plummeted inside the cab as a gust of wind from an unknown source made the truck rock slightly, and a high-pitched whine, like feedback from a poorly grounded speaker, echoed in his ears. Outside, the shadows danced and writhed on the tunnel walls, morphing into grotesque shapes that played tricks on his eyes. He stepped out of the cab to get a better look, the metal door creaking in the tunnel's eerie silence. The piercing high-frequency whine drilled into his skull, making his teeth ache and his vision blur at the edges. Cold sweat trickled down his back as the sound intensified, vibrating through his bones like a tuning fork struck against steel. That's when he saw it, the green orb, pulsing with an otherworldly radiance that cast an eerie jade luminescence. across the tunnel's concrete walls. It moved with deliberate purpose, floating toward him with a liquid grace that defied physics. The air around it seemed to bend and warp. While the temperature plummeted so rapidly his breath came out invisible puffs of vapor. In a surge of primal terror, Malcolm scrambled back into the truck, his hands shaking so badly he could barely grip the door handle. The orb's light filled the cab's interior in an alien, emerald glow that made everything look wrong, distorted, like reality itself was being warped by its presence. Heart pounding, his flannel red shirt now soaking wet from sweat, Malcolm quickly locked the doors. In his rearview mirror, another light appeared, red this time. Where were the other cars? Someone had to come along eventually. But the tunnel remained empty except for these strange lights. And with the heater dead, the cold began to seep into his bones. His teeth chattered as fear crept in. No phone, no engine, and no way in hell he was walking to either end of this tunnel without protection. The best he could find was his toolbox. A heavy wrench and hammer would have to do. Taking a deep breath, he stepped back out into the darkness. The green light reappeared, accompanied by a deep, bone-rattling hum. His truck's electronics flickered briefly, teasing him with false hope. The entity, he couldn't think of a better word for it, approached, surrounded by an ethereal green aura. It was 3 times the size of a man, hovering slightly above the ground. Malcolm's intellect raced with every UFO story he'd ever heard, every late-night radio show about close encounters. This was the real deal. "What do you want?" he called out, his voice echoing off the tunnel walls. "What are you?" The orb drew closer. Malcolm's knees buckled, and he grabbed his truck's side mirror to stay upright. Dizziness washed over him in waves, and though his vision remained clear, his thoughts grew foggy. Time seemed to stop. His watch was dead, his phone blank. When the orb halted just feet away, the glow was blinding. Malcolm could barely make out anything within it. "Leave me alone!" he shouted, but the orb just hummed in response. Then gravity betrayed him. His feet left the ground, tools clattering to the pavement. He clung to the mirror with one hand while his legs floated upward, until the mirror snapped off in his grip. He tumbled through the air, spinning 3 times before stabilizing above the vehicle, the orb hovering beside him. "What do you want from me?" he managed to ask. The response came in garbled sounds, unlike any language he'd ever heard, yet somehow he understood perfectly.
"Go back to the shack."
Slowly, he descended to the ground. As his feet touched the pavement, the orb vanished. His truck's systems sprang back to life, along with the tunnel lights. But when he tried to drive forward, the truck refused to move. Only reverse worked, a clear message. The 20-mile return trip took impossibly little time, as if space itself had compressed. At the shack, he heard it, the distinctive whine of advanced propulsion. A craft landed on the access road, though landed might not be the right word. The vehicle defied description, its edges blurring like a mirage in the desert. A door opened, and the familiar green orb emerged, depositing something on the ground. "You want me to install it?" Malcolm asked. The orb's hum was an answer enough. Malcolm picked up the apparatus, sleek, alien, incomprehensible, and knew exactly where it needed to go. Without bothering with his safety harness, he climbed the 1,000-foot tower, the long rod clipped to his belt. At the top, he installed it next to the main antenna array. It began to glow green. Back on the ground, the orb waited. "You have done well," it communicated. "Can I go now?" Malcolm asked. "Will you leave me alone? I hope whatever this is won't harm anyone." The orb retreated to its craft, which vanished instantly upon taking off. Malcolm stood there, trying to process what had just happened. He went inside the air-conditioned brick shack to double-check signals. He checked the transmitter readings. Everything looked normal, though something about the frequencies felt off. They extended far beyond what any Earth-based equipment should be capable of producing. The alien equipment had somehow modified their broadcast equipment, using the existing RF infrastructure as a quantum amplifier. Their mundane TV transmitter was now operating more like a dimensional gateway, with carrier frequencies that shouldn't exist in normal space-time. His psyche reeling from the impossible readings, Malcolm needed to verify the most basic function of their broadcast signal. Malcolm turned on a TV tuned to Channel 4, and was relieved the picture quality was perfect. He made a mental note to do the same when he arrived at home. The drive home through the now normal tunnel was anticlimactic until his phone and radio suddenly crackled to life with an emergency alert.
The predicted tornado system had unexpectedly dissipated before touching down. Meteorologists were baffled by a brief but dramatic temperature fluctuation of 40 degrees, lasting exactly 5 minutes, accompanied by aurora borealis-like phenomena.
The bizarre alert repeated itself 2 more times. While these events defied explanation, they appeared to have spared the county from devastating damage. But this was only the beginning of the unprecedented weather phenomena that would transform the region. The Appalachian Mountains loomed like ancient guardians around Asheville, their misty peaks now tinged with the mechanism's ethereal green glow. Where once rhododendron and mountain laurel had painted the slopes in natural colors, now dimensional patterns traced impossible geometries through the fog, as if the very landscape was being rewritten by alien mathematics. As his headlights cut through the fog, Malcolm's thoughts raced with questions that would haunt him for years to come. What exactly had he installed up there, perched 1,000 feet above the Carolina wilderness? Would it do more than just stop tornadoes? He thought about calling the local news, maybe even those UFO investigation shows he used to mock. But who'd believe him? A lonely tower technician claiming aliens made him install some ominous transmitter in the middle of the night? He checked the rearview mirror, half expecting to see other cars pulled over, people pointing at the sky, any sign that someone else had witnessed what he had. But the road remained empty, the stars unchanging overhead. The weight of this secret settled on him like a heavy blanket. Somehow, out of all the people in the world, they'd chosen him. Maybe that's what he'd been waiting for all these years. Not just a purpose, but proof that the universe was bigger and stranger than his small, painful slice of it. Malcolm lit a cigarette with trembling hands and took a long pull from his coffee thermos. Whatever he'd installed up there, whatever those beings were, they'd chosen to help. He checked his watch. 3 a.m. The night shift was finally over, but he knew sleep wouldn't come easy. Not with the weight of what he now knew. We're not alone. And sometimes, help comes from the most unexpected places. As Malcolm drove home that night, contemplating his encounter with the otherworldly presence, another story was unfolding across town. Stay tuned for Chapter 2, The Emerald Beam. Find out what lies ahead for the people of Asheville, North Carolina. Nighthawks, Battle for the Future of Humanity, by John D. Bertucci, now available on Amazon.